Hey there again. Um, last time I spoke about, understanding kind of root cause analysis and as it, deals with mental health and really kind of piecing together, kids that have had, adverse childhood experiences or ACEs as they call it, where it kind of predicts or at least looks at the increased likelihood that you're going to have problems health-wise down the track and a lot of other problems as well. I did talk a fair bit about the person, as I said, as a young child who's had adverse childhood experiences, you have those experiences, and obviously your brain and your body goes into defense mode, which is our fight or flight. That's how we're built, right, as a human being. So, it's obviously intended to be something quite short, but if you've got that sustained kind of scared feeling and defensive feeling as a child, and if you feel like you don't have any power because you're only little, when you think about human kids, we have to look after them until they're well into their teens, to fend for themselves. I mean, we're quite resilient and all that, but it's very unlikely for a child under, say, 10 to live without, a family looking after them or someone looking after them. So that's how we built, that's how we designed. And so, the child will use that defense mechanism to keep themselves as safe as possible. So, potentially if you go into fight or flight, if you think of the flight part, it's like shrinking down, not wanting to be noticed, if dad's, abusive or that kind of stuff. It's about flying under the radar, trying to do nothing to piss people off, to trigger it. And we learn these kind of techniques, but obviously as we become adults, we leave the house, do whatever, that can also have an impact on us, especially when we're defensive, when we're in that fearful state. You have an undercurrent, develop an undercurrent, but you don't even realise that your personality becomes one of defence, of shrinking down. When I was in the police force, we talked to people, and there's lots of studies from a criminality perspective of who people would pick on to, say, steal stuff from or become a victim of whatever crime they're planning. That they would look for how people carry their body language. People that are generally a bit more scared, a bit more fearful, tend to pull their shoulders in, they hunch in, they try to shrink down. They don't even realise they're doing those things because some of that, years earlier has kind of developed them that way. They come across as shy and all kinds of words we use for it. They're not outgoing because that's kind of what they've been almost conditioned. They don't realise it, but that's, that environment around them where they're not getting the love and attention they need. They might have, extreme fear for being hit or abused or whatever. So all these defense mechanisms for the person that's the quiet one, or the defensive one, the flight person, with flight is taking over. They want to get out of there. They want to use a way of defending themselves in the best way possible. And so that carries on in their personality. And you see that stuff's reflected. I know I talk about, human synergistics and the stats that they provide. And they certainly show that aggression and high defense, true defensive, passive defensive, not aggressive defensive, has just as bad an impact on how effective you are as a person, how your health suffers, how your family relationship suffers, all that kind of stuff. It's because those two dominate. When we talk about the defensive one, specifically the passive one, all that withdrawal, that people pleasing, that's kind of what you see. They want to make peace, they want people to be happy, because that's kind of what their history's made them kind of works for them, keeps them safe. Unfortunately, that also then relates into other things where they go into self-loathing because, they didn't stand up for themselves when they should have. Someone cuts in line, they kind of don't want to say anything, they're not comfortable standing up for themselves, but then it has an impact on them as a person. It has an impact on how they, treat their family when they get home. If they're treated like crap at work, for example, and they put up with it, and they go, damn it, I should have said something to that guy, or I should have told HR, or I should have done this, I should have done, and then that plays on their minds a little bit because they know they're not standing up for themselves. They don't know how to stand up for themselves. And so it has an impact on the rest of their life. Like we, at work, we employ the whole person, right? So what comes to work also goes home to the family, and they bring all that history with them, and then they also take how they react back home, and it has an effect on them. And so how they then treat their kids becomes a problem because mum's always unhappy, she's crabby, she's pissed off, or dad's unhappy, and now taking the aggression out on the kids because you can't do it at work. So understanding those patterns and understanding how to break that kind of pattern is important, not just for the individual, but for us as a society. Like, if we really want to focus on it, that's the stuff that we need to do, is that how do we get people to be able to, we can't always stop the difficulty of being an ex-cop, difficulty about, some of that adverse childhood experiences. We can't stop right now because we have to break that cycle. Like, if dad's had that upbringing and now he's taking it out on the kids, you're going to see that for another generation kind of stuff, unless another generation breaks the pattern, or unless dad now decides to change it. So I do think there's a number of levels at society level that we can address. One is obviously trying to help kids as they come into school that have had those adverse childhood experiences, identifying some of those things, helping to give that child resilience, helping to empower them, helping them to have those conversations that I mentioned in the last episode, and really focusing on that level. So that's the school level. Then we've got to look at, well, how do we now break the cycle of dad who's still doing this stuff to the kid, or mum, whoever is at home. What are the things we can do to kind of deal with that? Yes, we can have police go over and have child services check them and all that stuff, but there's a lot of these cases that we don't even know about, right? So how do we get into the mindset of those people saying, hey, you might have been this kid. So what Clint's talking about right now was you 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and now you're doing this to your kids. Maybe you can change that. Maybe, you can't take back the past, obviously, but you can take, proactive involvement in what you want to do for your own child. Take stock of what you're doing now, and if it's not good, then you can still change it and make amends for it. Like, there's a number of different levels that I think we can do, not just at school level, but at an education level, at a even incarceration level, like what we're doing with people in prisons and turning them around if they have done nasty things and then now they're sitting in prison. These are all really important steps that I don't think we necessarily look at the big overall picture of all these different levels, of all the different ages, and using different models to change those things. Like, for a kid who's only 4 or 5, you need a proactive model because it's all new to them when they come into school, right? So that's what I was mentioning the other day. But for people where we have to break a pattern, that's a change management model. That's saying we need to get them to focus in a different way, and they also need to understand at a different level than the kids do, because the teachers are kind of shaping that, doing those proactive things with with the class, and also the individual children. But if a person goes to prison for doing the wrong thing, you've got a one-on-one captive audience. How do you deal with that better in a way that's much more effective than just a one-on-one counselling kind of stuff that we do now? Okay, I hope you got